Hi and welcome. Usually I sit and you look at me and I talk about DIY guitar pedals in general, give a little bit of advice, things like that. Today we're kind of going outside of that mold. This is not really an official part of the series that I'm doing. Today I want to talk about the Electra Distortion and build out a simple distortion circuit, a full functioning distortion pedal out of this nice little Electra Distortion circuit. It's a really simple circuit. A lot of pedals are based on this simple Electra Distortion circuit. I'll walk you through it, and then we'll add some modifications to make it so that you can adjust the level of gain, you can adjust the tone, and then you can also adjust the volume. Right now, as things go, I have this running straight out of my loop pedal over here. So my loop pedal's that way, and it goes through the circuit and then comes out into the amplifier. Because there's nothing to modify the signal, whether how strong it is or anything, you can adjust the level of distortion very basically through the volume knob. So I can do that on my loop pedal here. If I hit this and turn it down a little bit, we're getting a little less distortion. That's all through just adjusting the volume output of the loop pedal. So there's not really a lot. What I'll do is I'll walk you through this circuit here on the breadboard. Don't worry, I know it can be a little hard to see. What I'm also going to do is put on the screen a picture of this that I make on the computer so you can see it more easily. And then I'll also write an accompanying article on the website that I'll link in the description just to walk you through the process, because I know sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to follow through on a video where honestly it can be hard to see the breadboard on video. So I'll walk you through it here, and then I'll put a picture of it on the screen. And then after you watch the video, you can read along and you can breadboard this out if you want. So as mentioned, we're coming in from just the input that's coming from my loop pedal or the guitar or whatever. That's going through a little capacitor here. That's probably just a coupling capacitor. It just stops DC power from, decoupling capacitor, which would stop DC power from leaking into the signal. That's going into our transistor here, and that's doing all the work to amplify the signal. A lot of distortion or overdrive, or a lot of pedals in general, will use an op amp instead. In this case, it's a simple enough circuit, just a transistor that's doing the work. Basically, it's just going to amplify the circuit with help from these resistors. So there's one providing power here, and there's one going to ground here. And it's the ratio of these two resistors that are going to determine how much amplification we're getting out of this transistor here. So if you want more or less amplification, you change up the ratio of these resistors. From there, it's coming out of the transistor into this capacitor. This cap is another decoupling cap, just so that the DC signal coming from here doesn't get mixed in with our nice guitar AC signal. Then we've got two diodes, each in different polarity, going to ground, and that's what's actually clipping the signal. Without these two, you actually just get a boost pedal. It just makes the signal louder. So, for example, I can turn this on here. That's without the diodes, and if I take the diodes out, actually I'm going to turn the power off so I don't electrocute myself. Probably won't, but you never know. Same thing without the diodes. We're getting a little bit of distortion there. That's just coming from probably the clipping of the transistor. But you can see it just came out louder. Still sounds pretty mean, I think, with even without the diodes there. But the diodes, these two little guys, are what's doing the clipping. And then out of the diodes, or after all the clipping, it goes into the output and goes into your amp. And that's basically, very, very basically, what a distortion pedal does. From here, I'm going to put a picture of what was there so you can build it yourself. But basically, all we're doing is we're going in, we're amplifying that signal, putting it through some diodes to clip it, and then out. That is the basics of a distortion pedal. When you're probably asking yourself, though, how do I adjust how much gain there is? How do I adjust the volume? Things like that. Well, there's a few ways to do it, and let's walk through that and we'll build that out. So if you're looking to adjust that gain, there's a few ways to do it. As I mentioned, the amount of gain you're getting is going to be a ratio between these two resistors here. So you can put in a variable resistor, aka a potentiometer or pot, usually into this resistor here that's going to ground, and that's going to change up how much gain you're getting out of this little transistor here. And the more gain you get out of the transistor, the more of clipping you're going to get. The other way, which for this, that would work for this circuit in particular, doesn't work for every single circuit, but for this circuit in particular, is since the amount of, since you can adjust the inflow of the signal coming from the guitar through the guitar's volume knob, you can actually put a variable resistor, aka a pot, before the transistor to make that signal smaller or larger. Well, not larger, but make it smaller, and therefore create a smaller signal, less to amplify, so you're going to get less clipping. Let's stay simple with this, and we'll put a pot in around here to adjust how much of a signal is getting to the transistor, and therefore adjust how much of we're getting amplified, and therefore how much clipping. So I'll put a cut in here, I'll set that up, you can see it, and we'll go from there. All right, so I've changed things up just a little bit here. Once again, I'll put a proper image up on the screen in a moment, so after we walk through it, so that you're not looking at a tangle of wires. But basically all I've done is put a little 5K pot right here. So it comes in from the input, it goes through the pot, which is a variable resistor, and then it goes into our capacitor, as usual. So as I adjust this pot, it will adjust how much signal is getting and therefore how much distortion we're getting. Just FYI, the pot is wired around the wrong way just because it was more convenient to do that in the video. So if I turn it counterclockwise, we're going to get more. If I turn it clockwise, we're going to get less. I could have flipped it around, put it up here, blah, 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 blah. But I didn't want to change up the circuit too much from what you're seeing. So let's have a quick listen. So that's all I'm doing. I'm adjusting the strength of the signal that's going into the transistor here. And obviously, if you're giving it a bigger signal, it's got more to amplify. The signal gets even more amplified, more clipping. You lower that signal, it has less to amplify, less is clipped off. And that's really all we're doing here. As I said, you can adjust the ratio between these two to also get more gain or amplification. I just think for this video it was going to be easier to do a quick little pot here than mess with the ratios between these two. Now what I'm doing, I'm just putting a picture of this on the screen. That's probably going to be a little bit easier to follow along rather than looking at this whole mess around here. so that you can just take a look. Once again, as I said, I'll link to an article on my website about this as well, which will have all the pictures too, as well as the circuit and everything like that, just so that you can have that. It's a little bit easier. Sometimes it can be easier to listen along and watch along, but then afterwards read it. So now, what about tone control? Tone control is something that is in most full-featured pedals. Tone control will usually go after the clipping stage here. So what we'll do is we'll put in a simple low-pass filter, which will allow us to turn another variable resistor, a potentiometer, and that will allow us to take out some of the treble and things like that. So I'll put in another cut here and put in some tone control. All right, and we're back. So I've just whipped up a pretty, basic tone control. Most tone control is pretty basic, actually. It's usually pretty similar to this. This was quick and dirty, though. So basically what we've got, as we've already seen, we're adjusting how much of a signal is coming into the clipping stage with this potentiometer. It clips. Well, it goes through, gets amplified, it clips, and then that signal goes into this potentiometer, which is creating a low-pass filter with this little, what is it? This is a 4.7 nanofarad capacitor, which is working with this 100K potentiometer, and to create a low-pass filter, and then the remaining signal is coming out as usual. So I'll put a picture of this so that you can build it yourself. You're probably wondering, what is a low-pass filter exactly? So there's a whole article that I'll link to about the theory of all of this, but the basic way to do tone control is you creating a low-pass filter or high-pass filter. A low-pass filter is when you go through a resistor, and that's all this potentiometer is. It's a variable resistor. Through a resistor, let the signal go through, and then have a capacitor, right here in this case, going to ground. And that's a low-pass filter. As the name would suggest, it allows low signals through, and it stops high signals, so high frequencies, the treble. Where it stops and what it allows through is dependent on the ratio between this resistor and the capacitor. A high-pass filter is completely the opposite. We have the capacitor that's letting the signal through, and then you have a resistor going to ground, and that will let higher frequencies through while putting all those low frequencies to the ground. And once again, if you adjust the ratio between these two, you're going to be eliminating different frequencies, which is why you do a potentiometer here, because all you're doing is changing the resistance, and therefore you're changing the ratio between this capacitor and the resistance, and that's going to change what frequencies are allowed through. Now, there's formulas for all of this, that is in the article that I'm going to link to about low and high pass filters, and you can really work out, exactly what this needs to be and what this needs to be, and just using some basic mathematics. And look, I kind of chose these at random just based on what I figured would work well enough. If we were designing this pedal to be, God's best distortion pedal, you would probably look at, what you like, as well as do some math, and then you would try it out, and then you might make some small adjustments to one of these, probably the capacitor, to find what to get that exact tone change that you want. This, as I mentioned, quick and dirty, but you can still hear a pretty remarkable difference in tone. Let's have a look. So that's all the high frequencies getting taken out of it. And now we're going to allow high frequencies through. So yeah, I'll put the picture of this on the screen so you can follow along. Again, if you just want to click the link to the article, start breadboarding this out yourself. That's a very, very basic tone control. Obviously, as I mentioned, you can tweak this as much as you want to get the exact way you want to do tone. Another thing to note about this circuit, though, is it's really, other than the tone control, it's pretty transparent. There's nothing in there that is adjusting the actual tone. If you look at circuits for bigger pedals, distortion or otherwise, I'll use the tube screamer schematic as an example because I'm familiar with it. I'll put that on the screen right now, but the tube screamer tone control is a little bit different from this pretty basic tone control. But what you'll also see are a few filters throughout there of that resistor, then capacitor to ground, or vice versa. Sometimes that's there as a drawdown resistor or as a decoupling capacitor or something like that, but that is still going to change the tone that's going through. Since all we're doing here is really this little tone control here, there's not much else happening to adjust the tone and give this circuit a very specific tone. But hey, we're going basic, we're learning here, and we're building out a full functioning distortion pedal just out of this little Electra Distortion circuit. So last but not least, we want to be able to adjust the volume. It's all well and good to be able to adjust the gain, which will adjust what the output's like, but we want to adjust the volume as well, and that's actually quite simple. I'll put a cut in, and I'll put a volume knob in, and we will see what it does. All right, we are back with a volume knob. That is just a little 50K potentiometer here, and it works pretty much exactly like this potentiometer here. All we're doing is creating a voltage divider, and we're adjusting how much signal is allowed through and into the amp. That's all we're doing. So as I talk about the theory, I'm going to just put a picture of this on the screen so you can build it if you like. But really, all it is what's called a voltage divider, which I won't go into too much. Once again, I'll link an article for you. But all a voltage divider does is it varies the voltage. And that varied voltage is your guitar signal. And you give it more, you're louder. You give it less, you're quieter. So again, we're adjusting that signal here, how much is allowed through, and therefore how much is amplified. It clips, and then we adjust the tone here, and then we can adjust the volume with this final pot. And you have a full-featured distortion pedal. Let's have a listen. And that's really it. we got gain control, we got tone control, and we got volume. You can do everything with this pedal. You can adjust how much distortion you're getting. You can adjust your tone, and you can adjust how loud it is, so you don't blow everyone's heads off when you turn it on. And that is your basic distortion pedal. This is very, very basic. Obviously, I've put pictures of everything on the screen, as well as the actual circuit for the Electra Distortion, so you can build it yourself, have fun with it. The typical Electra Distortion circuit, those are all proper values as per the Electra Distortion. These pots I kind of just chose almost at random. So look, I haven't really refined to try to get this perfect distortion for you, because look, we're just trying to build a quick and dirty distortion pedal. And even on lower ranges, it still sounds pretty good, because that's the beauty of the Electra Distortion circuit. And like, look, this circuit has been the basis for so many other great pedals, but it's good to kind of learn and know about the Electra Distortion circuit, whether or not you want to play with this and modify it and make something all your own, or whether you want to modify other pedals that are based on the Electra Distortion circuit. You can do that too. There's a lot you can do with it. On my website, take a look at some of the beginner builds especially, which are often based on Electra Distortion. From memory, like the Love Pedal Champ is based on the Electra Distortion. I think the Green Giant is an Electra Distortion. I'll link a few more, I'll find them. And if you want to play around with the Electra Distortion circuit, you can build some wonderful pedals just based on this little circuit here. If you want to breadboard this out and really play with the values for the tone, as well as maybe change up this transistor or change up the ratio here, or put in a gain control here, you're also welcome to do that and make something completely your own. Also, you can change up the diodes to see how the clipping might change a little bit there. There's a lot you can do, and you can build out your own distortion and invent your own distortion, something unique that's completely yours. Tell me how you go. Have fun with this project. If you like it, you can map it out, probably put it on some stripboard, and have, you know, a completely unique distortion that no one else has. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll link to a written version of this video in the description of this video, so that you can follow along with easier to follow diagrams and things like that. Once again, any questions, let me know. Otherwise, like this video, subscribe, do all that stuff. It really helps me, because, you know, I like the feedback. Other than that, we'll speak again soon. Thanks.